One thing that you notice is that synchronicities are very common for those that have awakened and have realized that this world is not as it seems. And I know that it's very cliche to say that if you're familiar with, spiritual concepts, so-called spiritual concepts. But really, it's the truth. The world is not as it seems at all, actually. For example, each and every single one of us, we think that we are this character that exists inside our brains, inside our skulls, and that every morning we wake up from sleep and we have to just continue our routine and do whatever it is that we recollect from the other day, just kind of like a continuation. Sometimes in a loop, sometimes in something else or something completely different. But, nevertheless, you have to continue where you left off the other day. In many cases, you don't even directly remember anything that happened yesterday. At least you're less likely to really understand or remember the situations that happened just yesterday. But you still nevertheless wake up and continue the same routine. A lot of people think that this world is real, and you tell people that are unfamiliar with these concepts or perhaps don't read about it, maybe because they're too busy with work or something else. They're just not interested, or they've never heard of this, these spiritual concepts, and they're like, oh, I don't, that's weird, crazy hippie bullshit, and none of that is true, or you're crazy, you need meds, right? But oddly enough, scientifically speaking, the world that you see around you is not as it appears at all. Not only is there a complete and total lack of foundation for color, but also for qualia and sensations too. As a matter of fact, electromagnetic radiation, which is what they say light is, doesn't actually have any color. Color is somehow rendered by the brain, and how this happens, nobody knows. Try to explain color to a blind man, you're not going to be able to, and yet that's the very thing, that's the most obvious thing that people that can see experience on a day-to-day basis. And yet it's not something that we have any clue of, and it's not something that's actually real outside of observation. And yet we insist that everything else is real because, well, I can see it, I can touch it, I can observe it. Well, you can also see things in a dream. That doesn't mean that a dream is real. As a matter of fact, your waking life is pretty much a dream state. Just like when you're dreaming, you assume a character and you think that you're this body, you think that you're this personality. Your dream character is oftentimes a continuation of whatever amalgamation your mind has created of this avatar body that you think you are in this world. It also kind of continues in the dream state, but it's a lot less coherent. But something you notice is that while you're dreaming, not only do you see colors, not only do you experience a world in which you are a subject and you are observing something that appears to be separate from you. You observe people that are different sizes, different colors, right? Different objects, different form. And well, everything looks coherent. Everything looks like it's supposed to look like if you're engaging in an environment that is external of you, until you wake up and you realize none of that was real to begin with. It was all just a dream, but you weren't aware that it was a dream while you were unconscious. And that's the mystery of dreams. Science doesn't know how to explain dreams because when you're dreaming, your brain is not interpreting stimuli. It's not receiving stimuli at all, and your brain is essentially shut down. Yet you still find yourself immersed in this world where you are experiencing an autobiographical self, an observer, if you will, an avatar, I'm a dream avatar. I'm this figure that's experiencing this world. Yet your brain is not active. That shows you that consciousness is fundamental. That shows you that the observer does not rely on stimuli from some sort of external world, but that everything you see around you can just be one big projection, just like a dream. If your mind can create a projected existence that feels real, that feels like it's actually true and solid, that feels like it's a genuine place where things just happen randomly, even though there's no such thing as randomness, and that's something we're going to get into later on in this video, but you get the point, then how can you distinguish this world from a dream state? The sensations might be a little bit more coherent and more stable as far as the quality is concerned. There does seem to be a history, right? For example, whatever country you happen to live in. I live in the United States. I'm the result, you could say, of historical circumstances. The economy, the ideology, the political system was all thought up by people that existed many years before me, who existed in very different political realities and who came from very different parts of the world that my ancestors probably come from, and they spoke a different language, etc., right? And so there's a type of coherency, but that still doesn't mean that it's true objectively, because it only exists within the avatar, the observer. And yet nobody ever questions the observer. What is it that's actually observing or interacting with it? If everything ultimately stems from the mind, as far as our direct experience is concerned, right? Then, well, that means, of course, if we can't directly perceive the mind or know anything about the mind itself as an entity, it must come from a higher state of being, a higher state of reality. Reason and logic tells you that mind is separate from form. It is not the same thing. Form and its context comes from mind. And if you don't believe me, just if you look into Platonic philosophy, there's this idea about beauty, for example, right? Beauty, what is beauty? Well, beauty is not a thing you can point to. It's not like you can point to this object or that object and say, well, that's beautiful. No, that doesn't exist, right? You can't point to any particular object and say that object is beautiful. Or that object is beauty. What you can say is that that object is beautiful, meaning it contains beauty, but it's not beauty itself. That already shows you that every context, every experience, and every reality that we give to everything around us comes from the mind. And if our experience is just a projection, if you will, applied to things that we observe by the mind, then that shows you, again, if you use your reason and your logic, reason should point you towards the understanding that therefore the conclusion is not only is mind fundamental, but mind is what's truly real and not the world you experience around yourself. But what is mind? Well, it's invisible. You know, it's like if you read the Course in Miracles, which I highly recommend, by the way, if you're somebody that is new to spiritual concepts, you know, the Course in Miracles may be very strong. It may be something you're not quite able to grasp or truly understand. I would recommend using artificial intelligence to ask about the Course in Miracles, you know, kind of start a conversation thread with ChatGPT or Gemini, Google, or something like that, and ask it questions about, you know, A Course in Miracles. You could ask it, what is the Course in Miracles? What does the Course in Miracles teach? What are the lessons about in the Course in Miracles? What's the history of the Course in Miracles? To kind of familiarize yourself with the logic of A Course in Miracles before you actually start reading the book yourself. And even then, the language is still too strong for most people, actually. So I recommend first, you know, getting up to date on certain spiritual topics and idealism. You could start with, for example, Michael Talbot has a pretty interesting book called The Holographic Nature of the Universe. You could start with something like that, you know. something that kind of familiarizes yourself, right, with spiritual concepts before you delve straight into just the Course in Miracles itself. And so, going back to what I was saying, onto the topic of the video, let's talk about synchronicities. One thing that you read in the Course in Miracles is that everything is you, that there is no such thing as separation. People wonder what synchronicities are all about. If you want to learn more about synchronicities, there's a lot of very interesting books about synchronicities that you can read. David Wilcock, for example, has a book called The Synchronicity Key. If you want to find out a little bit more about synchronicities, regardless of what you think about David Wilcock and some of the other theories that he is known for promoting or whatever, put that aside. We all have our different opinions, and focus on, for example, synchronicities. What is a synchronicity? A lot of people are shocked that they even exist. A lot of people wonder. There's a lot of mysticism around synchronicity, but I'm here to tell you that it's nothing mystical. Synchronicities are not magical. Synchronicities are very much expected. If you actually understand what this reality is and what this is actually all about, you begin to understand, oh, well, synchronicities are actually the norm. And yeah, they are the norm. So a synchronicity is just when the external world that you perceive reflects your internal state of mind. And people think that this is something interesting, but it's really not, actually. It's something that's expected. It's supposed to happen. If you don't experience a synchronicity in your life, you're probably not conscious. Because the whole point of a synchronicity is to show you that everything that you think is separate from you is not. This world is literally just a projection of your state of mind. It's literally a projection of your mental process. And nothing happens by accident. And if you don't believe me, let's say you're a scientific person, you're a man of science and you believe in the scientific method. Well, putting cold empiricism aside, let's look at some of the common theories about the physical universe from a scientific perspective. The common story or narrative found in science is that everything is made out of atoms, right? And that there are these fundamental deterministic laws of physics. And they say that with that, everything is particles in motion. Now, let's just assume for a moment that mind, whatever mind is, whatever consciousness is, whatever, let's say that it's a property of matter. Let's say that somehow it's a property of matter. Even if mind is a property of matter, that still means that it is made up of the fundamental particles that makes up everything. And if that's the case, then that means that the fundamental stuff of the universe, of existence itself, whatever you imagine it to be, has the potential of life, consciousness, and mind within it. Now, if everything is deterministic because of the laws of physics, right, and everything is just particles in motion that are moving in accordance to stable laws of order and structure or physics, then that means that there are really no coincidences that could ever happen, because every action and every event and every process is not just a chemical reaction, but it's a determined reaction from a previous cause, which was at one point an effect of a previous cause, and so on and so forth, meaning everything is determined, even if mind is fundamental to matter, or matter contains mind. You could say, some sort of either panpsychist or substance dualism, perhaps, maybe even hylozoism, where you argue that either matter contains within it life, which is hylozoism, or perhaps you believe in some sort of property dualism, where there is both matter and within matter is life or mind, or the opposite, right, which would be more of an idealistic panpsychism. Nothing happens by accident. Nothing happens by chance. Everything is determined. There are no coincidences, quite literally, because everything that happens obeys the conditions that caused it to happen before it, which obeyed the conditions that caused it to happen before that, and so on and so forth. It's like an infinite tapestry of cause and effect. People use the word random very colloquially. For example, if you find yourself at a shop, or if you find yourself at a Walmart or something like that, you may be looking for whatever it is that you happen to be purchasing on that day. And you may tell yourself, oh, what are these random people doing here, right? What are these random people doing here? Who are these randos? But there's nothing random about any of that. If I go to a coffee shop, it's not random. If I go to Starbucks, the people that are there for a reason. They're there because they want coffee. They're there because they need energy. They're there because, that's their favorite place to hang out. They may be on a date with somebody, etc. There's nothing random about my situation. There's nothing random about those people. And you can apply that same rule to everything. Everything is cause and effect. Everything ultimately comes from a previous effect, which was once a cause, and so on and so forth. There is no randomness in the universe. None whatsoever. Which ultimately means there is no free will. And I would actually agree with people that, really there is no free will. That doesn't exist. The Course in Miracles actually teaches you that free will doesn't actually exist. Everything has already been written. There are no coincidences. Now, the Course in Miracles has a very non-dual metaphysics. The Course in Miracles, if you don't know, is basically a mix of non-dual mysticism. You could say Western idealism, psychology, and Christian theology. However, the Course in Miracles is also a combination of elements from the New Thought movement. And so one thing that you read in the Course in Miracles, for example, is it often talks a lot about how there is no free will. Everything is one. Everything is God. Whatever you want to call the universal principle that is, and not only is, but also abstains existence at the same time, paradoxically. That's called God. We all come from God. And appearances might appear that we are not from God, that we are separate. We are separate species. We live in a world where there are different categories of different things, different animals, but none of that exists. None of that exists. That's all fake. And so the Course in Miracles lets you know that, well, the only thing that actually exists is God. God is the only real thing that exists. Everything is ultimately an illusion. That doesn't mean that it's not real, because it's still an experience. A dream is not real, but it's still experience. The experience of the dream is real. I could wake up from a dream and, of course, the things that happen in the dream aren't real. They didn't actually take place. They didn't actually occur, but I could still talk about it, right? I could still bring up the dream to others, my friends, my family members, etc. The experience is real, the experience of duality, the experience of the belief in duality, the belief in opposites, the belief in separation is real, but the Course in Miracles insists that that is just a belief of the mind. And there is only one mind, there is only one dreamer. There is no separate minds or separate dreamers. There is only one mind. There is only one dreamer. Everything else is an illusion. And what reality is oneness. That is God. If reality exists, it has to be one, because multiple realities would lose the meaning of the word reality itself. The etymology wouldn't make sense. And so once again, if you apply reason to your perception, if you understand the holy relationship, holy meaning wholeness, meaning one, you understand that reality is one. Everything is one. And separation is Maya, which means illusion. It's not real, it's fake. But you believe that it's real because it can be felt, and we create stories like, oh yeah, our sensations come from the nervous systems, they come from this thing and that thing, how it actually occurs, or how this thing could somehow cause the actual feeling of sensation, and how it's experienced, of course, is never explained. That's the so-called hard problem of consciousness that a lot of people refer to. There's no hard problem of consciousness. Consciousness is fundamental. That's it. Consciousness is not something like an engine that's being powered by something else. It's fundamental. And so that's why we wonder, well, what about qualia? What about taste? What about the sensation of I that doesn't seem to exist in neuroscience at all? Neuroscience does not back up the idea of you being an individual. There is no individual I in the brain. That doesn't exist. There is no I in the brain. There is no personality inside the dark skull that you think you're inside of, which is, again, just an illusion. So nothing happens by accident. Everything's a projection. Every event, every situation that you find yourself in is ultimately the result of your thought process, your decision making, and your deliberate intention. There's no such thing as, oh, I just happen to be doing this. I just happen to be talking to myself, uploading this video to YouTube, and whoever's going to come across it is going to come across it randomly. There's no random situation. If you came across this video, you were meant to come across this video. There is no randomness applied to any of this. Right? If you're watching this because you were meant to see this. You were meant to bear witness to this, to listen to my voice explain to you that you're not separate and that nothing is random. Everything has a purpose to it, even if you don't understand it. Because without purpose, there would be nothing to experience. All experiences have a purpose. Experience itself would be meaningless as an experience, paradoxically, without purpose. Think about it. What is experience without purpose? Right? Even if you're an atheist, you say, well, we still use words like purpose. Like, for example, the purpose of life is to reproduce, or I'm alive and I'm awake and I'm experiencing this world through my five senses because I'm an organism that's the result of many years of evolution. And I'm here because, again, that's already a purpose or a justification, I should say, right? Maybe purpose is the wrong word, but I should say justification, right? Experience would be meaningless without a justification of some sort. So, for example, even if you're secular, you say what? I'm alive and my body is functioning because of X, Y, and Z. There's a purpose to it. There's a reason. Maybe I should use that word rather than purpose, because purpose might sound a little bit too cosmic. Like, oh, what do you mean purpose? Was this built by somebody or was this designed by somebody? I should say the word reason. Like, okay, I'm alive because of this reason, right? This experience exists because of this reason. There's a reason for everything. And reason and purpose basically means kind of the same thing. So nothing is random. Experience itself is not random or purposeless. There is intention behind it. There is a reason behind it. Even if you want to interpret things from a scientific lens, like, well, I'm awake because, well, I'm a body that's running on X, Y, and Z, right? And I have energy, or I need energy, I need metabolism, etc. That's a reason. You could explain your experience by attributing to many different reasons. Like, okay, this is the reason why I'm here, or this is the reason why I'm awake right now, and this is the reason why, etc. You get the point. Basically, what I'm trying to say is the very function of an experience would be void without reason, without the purpose or reason applied to it. Which again goes to prove that everything has meaning. Everything has intention. Everything is there for a reason. Nothing is random. And what you see is not truly what is there. So I'll leave this I'll leave you guys with this information. I'm here to tell you right now that just like a dream, everything is just one image and then another image and then another image and then another image. It's like a tapestry of images. It's like a tapestry of situations. It's a tapestry of events that are happening. Just like this life is just one image that you see and then another image that you see. And so to describe the motion of images, we call it time. We call it time flow or time duration. But notice that always behind the image, there's a perceiver. There's somebody that's observing it. There's a timeless individual, if you will, which doesn't really exist because we're all one. But, for the sake of argument, you could call it an individual. There's a timeless individual, a timeless self, a timeless mind, a timeless observer that is experiencing all the different motions of all these different pictures that we call events or situations or life or whatever you want to call it, just one image after another. But it's all an illusion. There's no such thing as time. Everything is happening now. You are basically like a person in a movie theater watching a screen right now, and you're immersed in the screen and you're immersed in the motion pictures that you think it's real, but it's not. You think you're actually part of it, but it's not. You're the observer. You're the thing that's monitoring it, that's timeless. That's what you really are, and it's invisible. If it cannot be seen by the eyes of the body, then that means, of course, that the body's eyes were not meant to see the mind. It was not meant to see the observer itself, because the observer itself, reason would have you understand, if it cannot be perceived by the five senses, that it is beyond the five senses. It is beyond the physical world, completely and totally. It is what you actually are, which is mind, which is the Greek word for spirit. That's what mind means. Mind is spirit, psyche is wind, spirit, it's all the same thing. And in the Course in Miracles, Jesus tells us that that spirit is like the wind. No man knows where it comes from and no man knows where it's going. So that's the first lesson. That's the first rant that specifically pertains to these types of non-dual mysticism or new thought metaphysics and psychological concepts, right, that are taught in, for example, the Course in Miracles, but through Christian theology. If you're interested in learning more, you should purchase the Course in Miracles. You don't really want to delay your awakening too long, because there is no other purpose to this world. What are you going to do? Spend your entire time chasing things and wondering why you can't have what you desire, wondering why you feel incomplete, wondering why you feel fragmented, wondering why you're chasing things and why you're a hamster running on a wheel and you're never satisfied with anything in this world and you're always upset. It's because nothing in this world is meaningful. And you know that everything in this world is meaningless, and that angers you because you are a son of God. This is a poor excuse. This world is a poor excuse for a son of God. Your home is not here, but in eternity, and you need to wake up from the dream. The dream of separation, the illusion of Maya. And you need to understand what you truly are and what you always have been. And so the last thing I'm going to say is that your brother, which is another person, you think that's a solid individual, that's a solid carnal body, that's an immovable body. It's like a giant made out of bricks. It feels intimidating because, well, of course, the eyes were meant to see it. The appearances were meant to be observed by the eyes. That is, of course, the mechanism in which light enters the brain, and the brain, of course, which renders your experience. But once you understand that there is something more fundamental behind the eyes, behind the observer, you understand, well, what I truly am is a force that is invisible. And if that's what I am, that's what my brother is too. Another person is not actually another person. He's just you in a different mask, in a different bodysuit, in a different meat suit. That's it. Everybody wants to feel love. Everybody wants to feel joy and happiness. Not because that's beneficial to our survival for some biological reason, but because of psychological, i.e., spiritual purposes. That is what we are as extensions of God. We desire and crave to feel whole. And so we must recognize the Christ, which is a metaphor that the Course in Miracles uses, radically reinterpreting Christianity. And the Christ means, of course, the extension of God, the Son of God, the extension of God. Picture like a bubble of golden light or white light that's extending, and the extension would be its emanation. And from that emanation, you would have, of course, the Son, that's the emanation, and the Holy Spirit, which is the memory of oneness and unity. But that's for another time. So I'll leave you with this last sentence. Let us rejoice together in the truth of what we understand and what we know to be our true selves. And with that, together as brothers, not as separate bodies, because only bodies can be separate, but never minds, because mind is invisible and it's eternal and it's fundamental. So it's one with everything. It's whole because it's reality. It's qualitative and not quantitative. It cannot be simulated. Let us as minds, as qualitative minds, come together and understand what we truly are. That way, the ginormous giant made of bricks will be exposed under the light of illumination as nothing more than a shadow of emptiness and unreality. A paper giant, a phantom made out of tumbling weeds that was never truly there to begin with, which is basically what the body is, and that's what separation feels like. It feels intimidating at first. You're looking at another person, you're looking at a body. It feels like, wow, this body is in front of me and it's talking to me. I'm seeing all these images. But remember, there's a reality beyond appearances for the reasons that I've already explained to you before. And reason would have you understand that there is reason to everything. There is reason to all experience. What's the reason why I'm uploading this right now? Well, the reason is because I want to upload this video to YouTube so that other people can see it and wake up. Whoever needs to see this will see it because it was always meant to be that way. Right? Nothing is random, nothing is a coincidence. What's the reason for, I don't know, my my drywall being white? Well, it's because that's the paint that was used by the workers. What's the reason for me laying on bed? It's because I'm more comfortable speaking when I'm laying on bed. You see, what's my point? Well, my point is that every experience has to have a reason behind it. If there is no reason to justify the experience, then really the experience doesn't exist. Why am I uploading videos? Well, because I want to get these thoughts out. Why am I at a coffee shop? Because I want coffee. Every experience has a reason behind it. Everything. Why is a bear eating a deer? Because a bear is hungry. Why does the earth exist? Well, depends on what you believe. If you believe in our modern creation stories where things kind of just naturally evolve, then the earth is basically some sort of orb-shaped dirt ball that's kind of floating in the middle of nowhere, this void of outer space, as a planet that's orbiting a bigger star. Why does it exist? Because many years ago, many eons ago, there was a natural process of chemical evolution that led to the creation of certain metals and certain rocks and other material that condensed into a ball because of this force called gravity. What is gravity? Gravity is this force that exists. It's a fundamental force of the universe, they say, where objects of mass attract other objects of mass. Right? Why does the sun exist? Same reason. Electrified gas matter is condensed into a burning ball of hydrogen and helium that's been burning for billions of years, despite, of course, the fact that I'm very critical of that perspective, because a condensed ball of hydrogen and helium burning because of nuclear fuel doesn't really work in a vacuum, because nuclear energy or nuclear fuel only burns for a couple seconds unless you refuel it. And so where is that extra fuel coming from in the void of outer space? Right? How can something be burning for billions upon billions of years without any extra fuel? But I digress. You get the point. But the point is that everything has a reason. There's a reason to all experiences and all occurrences. Why is my dog scratching the floor? Well, my dog is scratching the floor because he wants my attention. Why do I feel cold right now? Because of the ceiling fan that's above me. There it is. Experience without reason would be futile because it wouldn't exist. It's literally an oxymoron. You cannot have an experience without a reason. There must be a reason to everything. So my point is, everything exists for a reason. Nothing is random. You are not separate. The world is a dream, and we're all one. The road to true inner peace is by applying the lessons in books like The Course in Miracles to your day-to-day life. That way, from a very personal and individual experience, unique only to you, you can wake up from this unreality of separation and form. But first, it requires a lot of work. You need to actually heal your mind first, and you need to stop craving form. And it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of experience. It takes a lot of dedication. But anyway, that's all I have to say. I'll leave you with that. I love you. God bless. May God take care of all of us. Amen.